Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. The Breeders Academy proudly presents Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano, a show for serious breeders.
Whether you are looking to create a new strain or simply improve an old one, you have come to the right place.
Daddy, I want more chickens.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's your host, Kenny Troiano.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bred to Perfection. My name is Kenny Troiano, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you become a better breeder and taking your strain to the next level. That's right, my friends. It doesn't matter if you are brand new to breeding or you've been breeding for many years. There is something all of us can do to improve our fowl for future generations.
If science teaches us anything, it teaches us to accept our failures as well as our successes with quiet, dignity, and grace. Son of a bitch bastard, I'll get you for this! What did you do to me? What did you do to me?
Stop it! You kill him!
I don't want to live! I do not want to live!
Quiet, dignity, and grace.
Oh, Mama!
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders Academy. I'm here with my lost and don't know where she's at wife, Nancy, and Frank Bradley. Hopefully she'll be with us pretty soon. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good. When Nancy's late, everything messes up.
Here's Nancy. So we're going to get her on here.
Do you know, you had me on the test one? So I clicked out of the test one and I clicked on the next one and it was still just me. I'm like, okay, let's try this again. And then I finally found where you guys were.
You thought we was playing hide and seek on you, Nancy?
I was about to go bust in on Kenny and just go be next to him instead.
I like this one.
The breeding god voice is my favorite one.
Oh, yeah. Hold on.
Like this? This one?
That's my favorite.
I call it God.
You wish.
I'm here, watching over you. You better breed your chickens right or I'm gonna come after you.
You're a nut. You're going to get coal in your stocking this year.
Oh, I already got that, I'm sure.
Kane Corso says that you guys are going to turn me into a chicken breeder. That is so funny because he's a dog breeder.
I was getting ready to say, I think he's a dog breeder.
Yeah, I've actually been on his show a couple times comparing chicken breeding with dog breeding.
I love the dog breeding part because if it wasn't for the dog breeding, I wouldn't be sitting here today, probably.
How you got into breeding was because of your mom and her books on dog breeding. And I lost count how many people told me how important it was to hear that because they came up the same way, didn't realize there's so many similarities between dog breeding and chicken breeding. Yeah, we select for different traits, but processes are the same. Now, since we have been getting more dog breeders, there's a handful of people that are doing it right. They're using the right methods at the right time, but there's a handful that they do it right for a little while and then they go off the rails. There's even one that understands the value of evolutionary biology when it comes to selective breeding. And he gets so much of it right, but there's a couple things he gets wrong. And those two things are the most important parts. And then there's some just get so wrong. I find that dog breeders, different from chicken breeding, is how they handle line breeding. Some of them aren't. Some of them understand the importance of inbreeding. They understand there's some inbreeding that had to happen or those breeds wouldn't exist. But there's so many that are scared of inbreeding or anything that resembles inbreeding that they go to extremes to avoid it, to the point when they're not really doing the inbreeding or the line breeding like they should. They're actually doing in and inbreeding. They're working so hard to avoid it.
Lee was saying that you and Kane Corso answered a lot of his questions, and he's thanking you both.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I got a little story. Frank, you're just going to laugh at this. So Kenny's been trying to eat a more healthy diet. Tawny has
The
been
cookies
a
aren't
baking
helping.
fool. She has been baking sugar cookies, and I made some Mexican wedding cake cookies, and let's see, gingerbread cookies and peanut butter cookies with Hershey's Kisses on top, all kinds of baked cookies, right? And I've been trying to get them out of the house as soon as I get them baked because Kenny has no willpower. So last night he goes, "Oh, my stomach doesn't feel so good." And I go, "What did you eat?" And he had some cookies. I'm like, "Kenny, how many cookies did you have today?" And this is yesterday, right?
I didn't eat them all at one time. I kind of spread them out.
That's the problem. If you just eat one every once in a while, you've got a baker's dozen down and you don't even realize it.
Feeling very good today. I'm like, geez.
Amanda pulled that on me. We went out one morning early to go to the doctor or do something, pay bills, whatever it was. And we stopped in and we got some food, and I got a hot fudge cake for dessert. Coming home, she just started eating it. And the time we got home, it was pretty much gone. And then she looks over at me and her face is as red as my shirt. I can't hold my eyes open. I'm so sleepy. She had a OD on sugar. It was her first meal of the day, and all that hot fudge syrup and whipped cream and the cake and the ice cream. She doesn't make that mistake anymore.
My problem is I wouldn't make that mistake over again, but I forget what it did. It's like I quit drinking coffee because it was giving me problems, right? And I went almost a year without coffee. And then I was at the store and I go, "Nancy, I'd sure like to have some coffee." What was the reason I quit drinking coffee? And so the three of us are sitting there going, "Was it this? Was it that?" And I go, "Well, I guess I better start drinking coffee again then."
Figured it out what it was.
Yeah. The older I get,
That's
the
the
less I
second
can
drink.
have. Sucks.
What is the show about tonight?
Tonight,
Part
we're going to be
two.
talking about the biggest mistakes breeders make. This is going to be part 2.
The biggest mistakes Kenny makes.
Okay, we'll just talk about my diet and my sleeping patterns and everything else.
That pretty much covered it. Let's go on to part 3.
So that's what we're going to cover. Just so you guys know, the first half is going to be for the public. And then after about an hour, we're going to go into the Breeders Academy, where we're going to do the second half for our members roundtable. So for the members, after we're done, get back into the website so we can get your questions and your comments and have a good time there. And for those who want to get the whole show, make sure you join the Breeders Academy. You can actually go over there right now. The website is open for new enrollment. So if you go over there, register, get in, you'll be able to watch the rest of the show and all the ones after that. There's a lot of good information in there, like the Founders Program, all the programs and courses that support the Founders Program. We've got the Masters Class videos. We've got the Members Roundtable. Got a lot of good stuff in there, so make sure to do that. Also, every now and then I'll run into somebody who say, "Well, I've been watching you guys' show, but I didn't know you guys had a podcast," which is funny they say that because most of the downloads we get is on the podcast side. So if you go to www.breedersacademy.com, there's a lot of good stuff over there too. There you'll see the platforms for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I do encourage you to listen to the podcast side of it because in a lot of ways, we look at this show as the raw version of the podcast. Because when I do these shows, like this show here, will pop up maybe 6 months later in the podcast side of it, where it'll be formatted, it'll be edited, it'll be cleaned up, it'll be fixed up. You won't even recognize it. It'll be a completely different show. So I encourage you guys to go do that because in a lot of ways, they are different. They really are.
Yeah, they'll be thinking it's a show they haven't heard, and then halfway through it say, "Oh, wait a minute. I do remember now."
Yeah, so make sure you get them both. Get the podcasts and the live show, and you'll be happy you did. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that I only keep a small number of videos on my channel, and the rest are archived on the website for the members. And then the members have the members versions as well. Some of it's on genetics, some of it's on purity of blood. Then you've got the rest of the live shows, and then you've got health and disease. So make sure you check that out. Even if you're deciding not to be a member for now, make sure to go to my website, www.breedersacademy.com, where you can join our Breeders Bulletin, which is our version of the newsletter. There you're going to get a lot of free breeding tips, free ebooks on breeding, so make sure to do that. Before we get started on today's... Hold on, I'm not ready. She was supposed to do this, Frank. The
What was I supposed
advertisement
to do?
between the shows.
Holy crap.
Isn't that funny how she's the one that suggested this and she acts like she heard this for the first time? Okay, we'll be right back. Yeah, sure.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. This show was brought to you by the Breeders' Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl. As a member, we'll provide you with the roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. I urge you to check it out. You've got nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders' Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
I hope to see you there. So let's get started.
Okay, this is going to be part 2 of the biggest mistakes breeders make. This will be fun. So Frank, one of the mistakes is they're using brood hens that are too old.
And brood cocks. And the thing about it is, we've talked about this many times. When you bring two, say, past their prime birds together, you're going to run into some pretty dinky type offspring out of those old pairs or the old hen and the old cocks. And I've done this many a times because it will be birds that I really didn't get what I thought that I needed to have, so I want to get more out of them. And you can get some pretty messed up offspring out of those really old birds. You really can.
Most of the time, if you don't get any, let's say, genetic triggers or any weird things that pop up as the cock gets older, as long as he's fertile, a lot of times you can use him. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people like using the cock in a line breeding program, because they can use him longer. A lot of times they get them already at an older age, and they have to try to get as much as they can out of them. But they don't read the signs. When there's a problem, they don't realize when it's time to stop breeding to him. But the hen, a lot of people don't know that her reproductive lifespan is a lot shorter than the cock. Let's look at her eggs. Now, she is born with all the eggs she'll ever lay already in her, right out of the egg. So when she's 6 years old or 8 years old or 9 years old, so are those eggs. And so a lot of people aren't reading the baby chicks. When the chicks start becoming a little lethargic, they're not as active. A lot of times it's because that hen's just too darn old, and those eggs are too old. I use this example a lot. When we found out Nancy was pregnant for Tawny, there was a little concern because Nancy was like 39 years old, I think it was. And 38, sorry. 38. And
Get it right.
I got to get. And so they were making sure that the baby was okay, because the older a woman gets, the more chances of problems with the baby. And so they did an amniocentesis to check it out. And thank God everything turned out really good. But that just shows you, even a woman, she's born with all the eggs that are already in her. And the older she gets, the older the eggs get, and the more problems can arise with the baby chicks. I used to say 6 or 7 years was the limit for most hens. I've been actually doing pretty good. And I think it's because my family is refined like they are and well selected that I'm able to get away with it. I'm actually pushing it to 9 years lately with the hens and doing pretty good. But understand that once those chicks start coming out bad, you got to scrap the chicks and you got to stop breeding to that hen. And I would actually plan on using a hen no more than 8 or 9 years tops. And that could be pushing it for some families.
Yeah. Really, you look at it, you get out of the hen about half of what you do the cock. Like Kenny said, you get up 4 or 5 years old on a hen, you're pushing it. But health, vigor, her genetic makeup, a lot of it comes into that. Some hens you can push a little bit farther, some you can't. But Kenny said a cock is constantly regenerating his sperm. So that gives him an edge over the hen.
What are some of the signs that happen when you realize the hen is too old? What are some of the things that happen?
The biggest thing is chicks are just not very active. They're lethargic. Sometimes they don't even hatch. And when they do, they just sit there. They don't move around very much. And that's probably the first sign. You just see a lower quality in the offspring. And I had a member not too long ago ask me, because we talked about the age of the hen, If I have a 6-year-old hen, I'm not going to be able to line breed her and get the most out of her. And I go, that's not usually the case. When you actually get a hen from someone, you don't want to buy a 6, 7, 8-year-old hen if you can help it. But if you get one, a lot of times when you're starting a strain, the initial bird you buy, you're not going to continually breed them. They have one job, and that's to get the strain going. Once they do that, and the offspring look pretty good and promising, then you scrap her. There's a chance you might have to go back to her once if she's not producing. But I'll tell you, if I have a 6, 7, or 8-year-old hen and the offspring don't look good, I don't think I'd back cross her and take the chance anyways, because I'm losing a year, and the chance of her at that age producing poor quality again, probably pretty high. So if I have an old hen and I don't see good chicks right off the bat, I'd probably scrap her and start over with something else.
And me and Kenny know this. And when you're starting to make your own strain, what we're talking about, you basically want to get as many chicks as you can hatch and afford. Okay. Yeah. And with an old hen, that's really tough to do, isn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, it really is. And I see this as part of a mistake too, is that they get this old hen and they breed it to an old cock. And you don't really want to breed old. Whenever you got an old bird, you really need to breed it to youth. So if I've got an old cock, I want to make sure I breed it to a young hen. If I've got an old hen, I want to make sure I breed it to a young stag, maybe a bull stag or a young cock. You can get away with breeding to a young stag. I wouldn't breed to pullets at all, but you can get away with stags. But the only thing you have a problem with is if the stag isn't showing his full potential because of his age. Because like we say, they could change it a year old, they could change it 18 months, they can change quite a bit by the time they get to 24 months. So if you have a lot of chicks on the ground, he turns out not to be what you thought he was going to be, you got a problem. And I only suggest it too is if you got an established strain, you understand the strain, and you pretty much know what you're going to get because you understand the family. With an unknown stag, I wouldn't do it. I only do if I knew the family. Yeah.
That's what I was going to come up with next, just exactly what you said.
I took it from you?
No, you didn't take it, but I was thinking it.
Yeah. Me and Frank were like, damn, I was going to say something, and then you said it, and now I have to think of something else. We go back and forth on that.
I've got my board here, one of these. And while Kenny's talking, if I think of something, I'll write it down.
Yeah.
I'll jot it down. And he'll be talking, and I'll jot it down, and I'm thinking, I'm waiting my turn, and then he says it. I'm like, okay, I'll find something else then.
I'm not smart enough to write it down. I think I'm going to remember.
Me too. You do it to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I start to ramble. I start going on, and my mind's thinking, okay, get Frank in there, get Frank in there.
It's not that. We're thinking the same thing. Basically, when you're talking about something in that sense, it's hard to get a coverage in on that because if you're that close to it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to say it. And I do the same thing. Yeah. I do it to you. You do it to me. Nancy, we do it to each other.
Everything I'm going to say, it's like a spider web of things. It's tied to this, tied to that, and I want to make sure I cover everything. But Frank does a good job. When I miss something, he covers it really well. So I'm lucky I have such a great co-host that he covers the things I don't cover, and I really appreciate that.
Vice versa, though. Yeah. That works both ways, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of times I'd forget something, or Kenny would set me up so great on something, and I'd be like, blah, 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 and then I'd go back and I'd think, oh, gosh, he set you up so well.
Some shows work good because the two hosts are contrary to each other. One covers one side, the other one covers the other side, and they debate it. And although we don't do that very much because Frank and I are pretty much on the same page, it's like I said, I'll cover a topic, and it's hard to cover it all and cover every angle. And then whatever I don't say, Frank comes in and talks about it. So I think that's why we work out so well. Although we're not controversial or we're not going at each other with different angles, we make sure we cover everything really well. The next one would be a lot
Great.
of...
I am not done with this one.
Oh, shoot.
Got more. So what about defects? Would defects start showing up in a 10-year-old hen, or is that something that should have been showing up throughout all the years?
Well, defects can show up at any time for any reason. And the more you double up the genes, the more chances of certain defects showing up. But if you do the cleanup process in the Founders Program like you're supposed to, you're actually eliminating those defects as you go. It's when you don't eliminate them properly that you're going to be affected with it later. But defects always have a chance to come up. If they're there, they can show up.
Latent triggers is more watching the older birds.
That's what you got to watch out for.
Big triggers then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So along the lines of age, what's the best age to start breeding a hen? 1, 2 years?
18 months. Yeah.
That would be the minimum for me. I'll tell people sometimes, if you got a new family and let's say the only thing you have is a young pullet and stag, maybe it's not a bad idea to go ahead and breed them, just see what you get. But plan on not using them. At least you're getting something on the ground. You're able to get a good look at what they could produce or what they're probably going to produce. But I would breed them again when they're like 2 years old. 2 years old is optimum for starting to breed your fowl. They're showing their true potential. You're seeing who they really are, mentally, physically, genetically. 2 years old is the best time to start.
That's prime.
Yeah, that's prime.
Yeah. But I wouldn't go under 18 months.
I
would
don't
not.
either. Not if you can help it. Only maybe as a test breeding, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be
Just like you
judging.
said, Kenny, somebody tells you, oh, these are pure, they reproduce themselves. It doesn't hurt what Kenny was talking about to take them over, get a hatch out of them, see if the chicks, see if they're similar or if they're like a bag of Skittles. It never hurts to test breed something.
Yeah. When I did that interview with dog breeding, his friend that was doing the interview with us made a comment saying that you guys can produce more chickens than we can produce dogs. We have to wait till they're 2 years old to see the potential. And when I was listening back to the video, I was like, that's where we are too. We shouldn't be breeding them within 2 years either. We need to wait till they're 2 years to see their true potential. So we're in the same boat as dog breeders, is we have to wait a certain amount of time. And he made a great point, and I missed it. I could have told him that there's where the similarities are, where we have some breeders in the Breeders' Academy that are quail breeders, and they tell me they can get 3 generations of offspring in 1 year, and that they're able to make huge progress really quick in a short amount of time, which we really can't with chickens when you think about it. It does take some time to create a family.
Let me see if I get this right. I know in dogs, it's 21-day cycle, and then they have 8 to 12 pups. I don't think she can breed again that year, right?
They come in heat every 6 months, usually. If the nutrition and everything's right, usually 5-6 months area.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
But you can be getting eggs from your brood fowl, and you could be hatching and hatching. So I think that's what he's talking about, is you can hatch so much more in a year of chicks than you could.
I think he was talking about they had to wait till a certain age where we could do ours sooner.
Okay.
But yeah, our hens are obviously going to produce more eggs than a dog's going to produce pups. So we have that advantage over them.
And it's a lot more expensive for a dog than it is chickens. I'll say that.
Yeah.
As far as the feed and the care and the medications and all that, it's crazy. We got to have them vaccinated for the dogs.
I was listening to them talk about all the things they have to do and all the vaccinations they have to do. And I'm like, I don't want to be a dog breeder.
No, it's tough.
Yeah, I couldn't do
tough
it.
because the thing about it is, Nancy brought up a good point there. Where we can hatch hundreds and cull from that, it's hard for them to do that. So they get smaller litters and less of a standout to pick from.
I do believe that their job is harder. If you're going to be a dog breeder, you got to be committed and devoted to doing just that and really doing it right, because I don't think it's for everybody.
My mom done it for 20 years, but when she got in her older years, it was just too much for her. She keeps a couple of dogs here and there, but nothing like she used to.
Before you move on to the next one, Justin had an idea of a mistake people make, because he feels that the biggest downfall for gamefowl breeders is not knowing how to select a good brood hen.
Yeah, and we're going to work on that here pretty soon. We talk about it inside the website, and it's under confirmation of body and the defects program. But we are going to make a video on how do you select the hens. Just know that in a lot of ways, the cock and the hen have the same type. It's all about the angles, the lengths and the angles and the overall conformation. You got to be able to look at the hen and compare it to the cock and understand that it's the angles you need to look for. She's going to be sexually dimorphic in many ways, from color of plumage to feather type to size of body. But the overall conformation, when it comes to the angles, is very much the same. And if you follow the standard, you look at the hen, she's got to be somewhere around 4 pounds, where the cock's about 5 pounds. That'll take care of the weight, and a lot has to do with the size, but it's the angles you're looking at. But we're going to do a video on it.
I had a guy ask me that same question, and he said, Frank, I'm excellent at the cock side, the rooster side. I can tell when a good rooster's a good rooster, that he's got good conformation of body, but I can't see it in the hen. And I said, well, are you familiar with the strain henny, the Cox's hennies? And he says, yeah. I said, could you pick one of those out real good? He said, yeah, probably could. And I said, well, just pretend the hen's a
Oh my
henny
God.
cock.
That is a great suggestion.
And that's what he said. He says, you solved my problem
Yeah.
right there. Like Kenny said, it's the same aspect of both. You want the same proportions of both. It's just how you look at
the
it.
The hen's going to be smaller size. She's going to be about a pound less than the cock, but she still has to have a broad, flat back that tapers nicely to the tail. Okay. She's got to have good angulation in the legs. She's got to have the proper angle in the tail, certain width of the back. She has to have a nice football type body. It's the same thing. A nice, neat head with a beak, the upper and lower mandible meet. If you read the confirmation, what the cock should be, you just read it out. And as you're reading it, think about the hen. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Basically, take the nice, fancy colors out of it. And if you take and, like we always talk about, made them all blacked out like a shadow, you want the same proportions.
We need to do that. We need to do some silhouettes of hens, on proper hens.
Yeah. And another thing, I don't know if you've seen it. You've not been on Facebook much lately, Kenny, but I am seeing a drastic amount of squirrel-tailed hens. And that's something I've never come across, squirrel-tailed hens. That's pretty bad when you see a hen that's squirrel-tailed. It's just not something I've seen a lot. But here in the last little bit, I've seen numerous ones. Their tails are just like the cocks right in the back of the head.
And if he goes into the defects course and you read off the defect, just visualize the hen. It's the same thing. Yeah, I saw a picture of a squirrel-tailed hen just recently. I'll bet I have it on my phone here. Because a lot of times I'll collect them on my phone and transfer over to my wall of shame folder. And
none of the people that posted them, they didn't have any idea that anything was wrong with the hens.
There you go. Wow. So if you look at a hen, you don't see the defect in that, you're not going to see it in the cock either.
But that's the way it looks. It looks identical to that tail right there. But something was even worse. It was right in the back of their head almost. It blew my mind. It really did.
I'll first collect them on my phone, then I transfer them over. When you look at Start Here pages on the Breeders' Academy, one of the first things I tell you to do is go through the confirmation course, the defects course, get to know the overall structure and form of the bird, because none of this matters. I don't care what breeding program you use. I don't care how good a fowl you think you have. If you don't know how to select them generation after generation, you're not going to make progress. You're just not. So Lee's saying the only place that squirrel tail looks good is in the pot. And I totally agree with him. Most people will go out to the yard and after reading the programs and courses on the website, on the Breeders' Academy, and it's sad, but they end up culling half or 3/4 of their birds because they just didn't know that was a defect. Squirrel tail being one of them a lot of times.
Yeah. You know, with a cock, it's going to take you a little bit to see it in all the offspring. But with a hen, you're going to be seeing a lot of it right off the bat. A lot.
Okay, so the next one is, and this is an interesting one. And I was thinking about this when I was typing all these out, coming up with the different ideas I see people do. But this is a big one, actually, and I don't think people think about it too much. And that is that they think that one cock or one hen represents a strain.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's played on the name game, of course. But a lot of times, it's like Kenny says, they say, this is my strain, and it's a cock and a hen, or a trio, 2 hens and a cock. But a lot of times, that's it. If I don't see numerous birds that resemble each other in every aspect, then I don't even see a strain. It takes quite a few birds. If you've got a strain and you're doing it the way you're supposed to, you've got a lot of birds just in that one strain, a huge amount of them.
I was working with a member, actually not a member. It was someone who was thinking about being a member, and she had a unique situation. And I don't usually do calls with non-members, but what she told me, I was like, you know what? I need to get on the phone with her, and we need to talk about this, because she bought a farm, and it's basically a hatchery already. I don't remember how many different breeds she's raising, but she's trying to figure out how to do it so that she's not messing them up. She's make sure she's doing it right and getting off on the right start. And I remember the look on her face when I told her how many pens that you're going to need just for one strain, let alone all the other ones. What you need to do and how you need to set the farm up just to handle one strain, how many pens I was going to take. It might have been an eye-opener for her on that one. That's why with my yard, the way it is, 3 strains is tops. I can't handle more than 3 strains. And I have a lot of pens.
That's when you don't have so many different strains. Could you imagine you having 4 or 5 different strains?
I find it funny when you go to someone's farm and they have a whole yard, teepees full of mixed cross hybrid cocks, okay? And their strain consists of that one cock and hen over there in that one pen. That's their strain. That's their whole strain. Everything is based on them. But yet they have a whole yard full of crosses. That's what I see most of the time.
Yeah. 90% of it. I'll be generous. I'll say 90. I started to say 95, but I'll be generous and say that's usually the go of it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
I've got a question on that. So she bought a hatchery. You're supposed to have a variety of breeds so that people can purchase from your hatchery. Do the larger hatcheries like Murray McMurray, they have people that breed specific birds for them? So all the breeds are not hatched on their farm?
Some hatcheries will carry the more common breeds and then have other farmers carry the rest, the ones that they don't sell as much of. And then there's some hatcheries that farm everything out, where they have farmers. We had one in the Breeders' Academy, a grower or a breeder for Murray McMurray, and I think he had 4 different breeds. And basically what they do is they flock mate everything. Flock mating is simple. You have a whole house full of birds, and usually for every 10 or 15 hens, you have a cock. So you have a lot of cocks in there. You have a lot of cocks, a lot of hens, all running with each other. And hopefully you get the fertility, a good hatch rate. But what they do is they spend the year hatching eggs, taking orders, shipping them out. And then at the end of the year, that last hatch is what they save for themselves. Then they depopulate the house, bring in the new birds. There's no selective breeding. There's no culling for defects, no culling for sick birds or anything. There's no course towards actually improving the breed. So what happens after a while is people will get birds. And for the average person raising chickens in their backyard, it's not an issue. They just want a few chickens that kind of look the part. But for everybody else who thinks they're going to buy birds from the hatchery as show birds, because of the way they've been bred for so many years, they don't resemble the actual breed as well as they should. And there's a lot of defects and a lot of issues that are associated with them. So if you want a good breed that you want to hopefully show and exhibit and actually improve and make a strain out of, try to find the best breeder you can that actually carries those birds. Get the best you can. Are you going to get them perfect? No, they're probably going to have some issues, but that's why the Founders Program is built the way it is, because it works through those. It cleans them up and fine-tunes them, and then you make them your own.
Without the Founders Program, you couldn't get chickens from a hatchery and actually breed them with any success whatsoever.
We came close with the Well Summers when we did it with those. It took some work, and we made progress. And we got to the point when they were starting to look pretty good, and we were getting them more inbred. And then we were having problems because the hens were going foxy and they were losing their partridge color because I was trying to make sure the cocks were the right color, which was not a problem. I was getting them the right color, but I was losing the hens. And that's when I found out from a friend of mine who actually breeds them. He told me I had to double mate them. To get the proper hens, I actually had to have some cocks with red mottling in the breast. And I was like, I hate those. That's not the proper color. And if I'm going to have to double mate them, I'm going to have a cox line, a stag line, a hens line, and a pullet line to make this all work. I'm not doing it. And I love that breed. I was so sad to get rid of them.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to breed a family that has to be double mated. It's just not for me.
Okay, here's the other one. Breeding too soon. Fall and winter birds. They're producing birds when it's wet, cold weather conditions. A lot of people think that they're getting the jump on everything by getting chicks out early so that they get them at a good size. By the time they get into the molt, they're in good shape. I've never had good luck with that. Whenever I've hatched chicks in the winter, they were never the healthiest bird. They're always fighting cold-like symptoms. Whenever I hatched birds in the summer, they didn't eat because it was hot, and then they were affected with bugs. So I actually think it's better to breed what Mother Nature dictates, and that's usually in the spring. But what do you think, Frank, about getting birds off too soon?
Well, if you get them off too soon, you better have a good enclosure and your nutrition better be right. Because if not, you're going to have a lot of culling to do at the end of the year. I promise you that. But Kenny's right. Mother Nature knows best. When spring first comes up around April, everything starts blooming out. That's when you get your chicks out on the ground. The temperature's better. There's more bugs, insects, small rodents. There's just so much for them to be able to prosper on. Because say we raise them in November or December, they've got to stay indoors. Now, if you live out where Kenny and Nancy is, yeah, you may be able to get by with that. But here in Kentucky, you got to keep them indoors because you got the blizzards, the winter, the cold, the freezing rain. They're going to have to stay in pretty much all year. Yeah, you can let them out when it's pretty, but still yet there's going to be very few days you're going to be able to let them out during that time. And then by the time it does get warm and you let them out, they're good size. They're ready for penning already. And it just doesn't work that way. But Kenny's right. Mother Nature is best.
A lot of times the hens aren't completely through the molt and recovered, so they're not producing like they should. And it's just high maintenance. Hatching chicks, a lot of times you're not going to be able to hatch them with the mother. You're going to have to use an incubator and then brooders. And then, again, high maintenance. So everything about hatching them early is a lot of high maintenance. It's more expensive. When you're talking about more feed, they're going to eat more feed. They're going to use more electricity. Everything you can think of is going to be double than it would normally be. And it's going to be a lot more work. So I'm not a big fan of it.
It's not the best way to go, but a lot of people does it. And I say this respectfully. They do it in order to make a living or make money, to get birds off early.
They just want to get as many off as possible.
Yeah. It's more to the money side of it than anything when breeding that early, from what I've seen.
So the next one would be not properly preparing for the breeding season.
That's huge. And not only for the breeding season, you see these people, they run out and they hatch off like 150 chicks. And they keep putting it off, and they don't even have places to put them. Even when they get grown, they don't have anywhere to put them. So in the commercial side, it's not as bad. But with gamefowl, if you don't have enough pens and those birds get up about 6 months old, you're going to have some bad accidents happen. I agree, Kenny. A lot of them is not prepared for when they actually start breeding.
Yeah. I think the molt is part of it. If you're not properly taking care of your birds, getting them through the molt, feeding them properly so that they're well prepared for the breeding season. I think they think the molt was a time to relax. Leave the birds alone. Don't give them much attention when they probably need even more attention. And even the feed's going to be a bigger deal. Like when they're going through the molt, it's a good time. Like I'll clean my pens up twice a year. I'll clean it up before the breeding season and then after the breeding season. So I'll spray everything down with a high power hose. And then I'll take the litter and turn it over, rake it down, and then if it gets too high, I'm taking some of it out and put it in the compost pile and getting the nest boxes ready, just making sure the bird's ready, figuring out which birds I'm going to breed, looking at my breeding program and seeing if I'm on track, seeing which birds I'm going to be putting into the breeding pen. And so that when I get into the actual breeding, like for me, it could be late January, early February when I start breeding. I'll start putting the pens together around January. I'll start putting the birds together, getting them in their pens, and then hopefully have chicks by March.
Yeah, that disinfecting everything is really big. Once a year, religiously, in February, I lime everything on my yard. The pens, the yard, everything. There's a lot of things I may skip over and not do, but that's one thing I do religiously every year. That's the soil that your birds is on is just as important as anything else that you can list. Probably more important than a lot of them.
This will be the last one, and then we're going to go into the back end for our members. Frank, breeding to all your birds and not just the standouts.
We say it often, and I've been to blame at this too, Kenny. If I hatch 7, I'd breed 7. If I hatch 3, I bred 3. I think we put ourselves in those positions and we really don't think about it. But if somebody had set me down back then and explained to me why I shouldn't do that, I would have understood it and changed my ways. But I think we just get into this cycle to where we're not really thinking about it until somebody points it out to us.
If they're not breeding to all of them, they think they're missing out. And if they have the pen that's empty, they think they have to fill it and breed from it. Instead of just looking at all the offspring in their entirety and then figuring out the few that actually have the ability to improve the strain. Because out of a group of chicks, there's always going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 that are so much better than the rest. We call them standouts, that they don't realize that's the ones you need to breed and then get rid of the rest, or don't breed to the rest.
I think a lot of them, they say, if I don't breed to that one bird, that's the one that will give me my best birds, and that's the one that I'm afraid not to breed to it. I think that's a lot of it.
Okay, let me be devil's advocate here and say this. You've done what you're supposed to do, and you've culled all the crap, and you have a yard of all good birds. Why wouldn't you breed to every single one of them?
Even in the best families, let's say you hatch 100 chicks, just a round number. Could be more, could be less. Let's say you hatch 100 chicks. Even from the best families, you're going to probably weed them down, if you did it properly, to the top 10%. There's always going to be an issue with some of them. And then from the 10% is where you select your standouts. Now, the better the family gets, the other 90% do get better. They get more uniform and everything, but there's always going to be that top 10% that are going to be better than the other ones. And you just got to learn how to recognize which ones those are so that you can take advantage of it. As the birds are growing and developing, you're going to start looking for the ones that are sick. You're going to be looking for defects, and you're going to be weeding them down. Little by little, you're going to be getting rid of birds as you go. And then what's left, you do your selection process, and you say, okay, there it is. Those top 10% from the original ones are the ones I'm going to move forward with. As they grow and mature fully, I'm going to be able to select the standouts from that. It's being able to recognize the standout, which makes a difference.
And two, you don't want all that diversity in there too. We say this all the time. They may be brothers and sisters, but if you're breeding to all of them, your gene pool is more this way rather than this way.
Yeah. It's all about tightening the bloodline, making her tighter and tighter as you go. Frank's exactly right. Good point. That if you're breeding to all of them, you're just widening the gene pool. You're not cleaning up the genetic diversity that exists, and you're just not making progress. It's like having a clan mating system where you have a cock that heads these different clans and you have 15, 20 hens in there, and you're not doing any selection whatsoever. That's why we say that a clan mating system is a terrible method for improving a strain. It's an okay method for maintaining an established strain, but not for creating a strain or improving a strain. Because any progress you're making is very slow, if any at all. And it's only made because it's all about the numbers by culling the worst birds and keeping the best. But you're still using a huge sample of birds to select from, or actually to produce eggs from, and it just doesn't work as good. You really need to, like you said, consolidate the genes and be more selective and make the strain tighter and tighter as you go.
I think the clan mating is basically just, like you said, Kenny, it's just basically to get numbers and individuals out of that.
It's like when you have an established strain, it's an okay maintenance system, because even when you're looking at the Founders Program as an improvement program, you're dealing with a lot lower numbers than you normally would. And for some people who need the numbers, a clan mating system off to the side is a great way to produce those numbers, but only with an established strain. You can't create a new family from a clan mating system. It just doesn't work.
Or buy a pair or a trio and go straight into line breeding. Seen it so many times.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see is people starting out, like you said, right into line breeding without doing the cleanup process that we show on the Founders Program. And they wonder why they still see all that genetic diversity and they're not making the progress they think they would. Members, when they follow my plan, they do the cleanup process. By the time they get to the line breeding program, it's amazing. The excitement they see is, wow, they're really uniform, they're real consistent. I don't see very many surprises. All those defects I was dealing with, I'm not seeing anymore. It just changes their world. And they realize that cleanup process, why it is and why it's so important.
And that allows them to see that they've done their job too, by not seeing any of that.
Yeah.
Is there ever a time when you should be using clan mating?
Yeah, like I said, when you need the numbers, when you're trying to produce a lot of birds for whatever reason. But my only caveat is that's fine. I mean, we all raise chickens for different reasons, but just don't do a clan mating system with a family that needs a lot of work. It really needs to be a well-established strain that's uniform and consistent already. You're not seeing a lot of surprises.
It's basically like playing the lottery, but playing huge numbers to get that one.
Yeah.
Okay? Pretty much.
Clan mating system, it's an awesome system. It's a really clever system if it's done right. But most people don't use it right.
That's the kicker right there.
Mm-hmm.
With the right birds.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. For our members, I'll meet you in the back end. For you guys who want to become members and see the whole show, go to the registration page on the website, become a member. We'll see you there. Thanks a lot. Okay, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the Bred to Perfection podcast show. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where by becoming a member, you can increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and take you and your fowl to the next level.
We can also show you how to create a strain from hybrid crosses or mongrel flocks, and help you to create, maintain, and improve your present strains. We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel anytime.
To join us at the Breeders Academy membership website, go to www.breedersacademy.com.
Best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
While you're checking out the Breeders Academy, make sure to sign up for our newsletter, The Breeders Bulletin. we provide a lot of free bonus materials and some great information that will take you and your fowl to the next level. Well, that's it for now.
We hope you join us next time for another episode of Bred to Perfection. We'll see you later.
Bye.